Jamie's a doctoral student in sociology, focusing on how communities produce, use, share, and govern data. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jamie.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Leslie. It's really great to be here with you virtually today. So as Leslie mentioned, Jamie Kleinsorge, I'm with CARES, which is the Center for Applied Research and Engagement Systems. We've been hosting your Community Needs Assessment Data Hub for several years, probably 8-9 years now, I think maybe more. And we also host several other state organizations or associations, New York, Washington, Idaho, Missouri, so some others, and then the National Community Action Partnership Hub as well. So if those tools, if you come across them and they look familiar, it's all part of the same group. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you guys. And basically what we're going to do today is we're going to take more of an in-depth tour of the Pennsylvania Data Hub. We're going to look at our community needs assessment tool, explore some of the data and the functionality within that tool, and then we'll jump over to the map room. So the map room is a little bit more exploratory, more of like a sandbox of data. The community needs assessment is a little more targeted. Obviously, it's going to help you really meet the requirements of your CSBG community needs assessments, and also any other types of needs assessments you may be doing in your community with other organizations. And I think there's a wide variety of other uses. So if you want to follow along, it's caap.engagementnetwork.org, and I'll put that in the chat for you guys so you can follow along. If you don't have registration or you've not had a login, feel free. If you kind of hover over login, it's gonna show register, and you can send me an email, and I can get you an account made. So the first thing you'll need to do is log in. You can't access the community needs assessment tool without logging in. So that'll be the first thing to do. And then really, we're going to go through a 3-step process. And so you can see those 3 steps are highlighted here at the top: location, data indicators, and reports. So those are our 3 steps that we're going to hit today in order to create a community needs assessment using this tool. This first option around location. So here you'll see that we have a list of agencies across Pennsylvania. So these are pre-populated based on your current service areas. So you can go ahead and you can select your entire agency region. And you simply do that just by clicking on it. You can select more than one agency region if you're working across regions or with organizations that maybe span county boundaries. So that's really the first option and probably the easiest way to go. I am going to show you, though, there are a couple of other location options. So we do have cities available. So there is Pittsburgh here. So if you're part of the Pittsburgh group, we do have that geographic boundary available for this report. We also have counties, and I wanted just to highlight this as well because there's sort of that 3-year cycle of completing your CNA and doing that for your agency. But I imagine that there's opportunities throughout your working day, working year, where you're working with other organizations or other partners, and they may be looking for some data, and your agency region is too big or too small or doesn't cover quite the same area. And so this option allows you just to select one or more counties and sort of create your own region. So if you're working with a public health department or an economic development council or a regional planning commission, something along those lines, they all have different boundaries to them. And so you can sort of create an area of your own. And then there's the whole state of Pennsylvania. So if you just want to get a nice big view of the state, you can do that as well. So I'm going to go ahead and just select an action agency. So you know what that looks like here. I think I wanted this one. We'll pick blueprints. I saw some folks, I think, from here. So we'll pick this region, and that'll be the completion of our first step. So we've selected our location for our community needs assessment. And the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to select our indicators. And this is really where I find a lot of the fun, is looking at and selecting the indicators that will be included in your report. We have made a nice little easy button here at the top that says select all indicators, and it'll give you everything that's included in the system currently. But I do want to point out that you can really customize and narrow the data that you select for this report. And so you can open each of these categories just by clicking. There's a little caret on the right-hand side, or you can click the category and you'll see that it expands. And so under population, for example, we have population change, household types, urban versus rural. And so I can select this checkbox next to the population category, and it gives me all of the indicators nested under that category. Or I can select just individual indicators here and really start to, like I said, narrow down or target those data that I want to look at. So here I've selected a couple under population. Just a note here, we know that the census has released updated population data, including race and demographics. Our team is working on getting that incorporated. They did release the files slightly different this year, and so we've had to go back and do some additional calculations to make sure that our percent change and those types of things are calculated correctly. It's taking us a little bit longer. So just know here in the next couple of weeks that if you come back, hopefully that census data will be updated in your report and then also reflected in the map room as well. Looking down some more of those categories, we have informations around veterans. We get into things like employment and unemployment, looking at education. So one of the things that I want to point out as I'm looking through these indicators is that you'll notice as I hover over each one of them, this little I button illuminates, right? And so if I were to click on the I button, what it's going to do is it's going to give me a little bit more information about this indicator, right? It's going to tell me what are my data attributes. So for example, this is going to tell me both the number of employed and unemployed, and it's going to give me the rate. It tells me where it comes from. So down here is the data source that comes from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and it tells me the date when it was released. So this is all very recent, from June of 2021. This is also a link. So if you want to get back to the original source and learn more about how the Bureau of Labor Statistics collects this information and how they post it and when they post updates and things like that, this link will take you straight there. And that's true for all of these indicators. And I just wanted to point this out because I think it is helpful sometimes when you're not familiar with the data sets to ask the question, like, is this really going to tell me what it is I'm looking for? And I think these little preview buttons say, okay, this might be, I might be on the right track, or this is not going to give me what I need. So again, you can select an entire category, or you can just select those individual categories. We've got housing, income, poverty. So these are all of the major categories of information that you'll need then for a CNA. We've got nutrition, some healthcare, crime, poverty. Obviously, that's a big one for you guys. And so I'll just go ahead and make this sort of random selection. So again, we've chosen our location, which can be your action agency or a county or a group of counties. Now we've selected our data indicators, and that again can be all of them, or can it just be a subset of them? So now we're going to actually populate our report. And as you guys know, a good community needs assessment has secondary data, but it isn't the whole story, right? It's one piece of sort of the larger puzzle that you guys are putting together when you're building community needs assessments. But I do think as you're having conversations in your internally or in your community, if you ever want to sort of fact check or ground truth sort of what people are talking about in terms of conditions, or maybe what you're hearing even on the news about your communities, this is also a good place to make sure that you come and, just get really good data. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to close this menu, but what happens is it's going to show you all of the indicators that you've selected. And you'll notice that there's this little X down here, and that allows me to close that menu. I can open it back up because this page is a long scroll. And so sometimes maybe I want to jump between indicators, and I can use this menu to do that. And I'll show you guys how that works. But before we get into that, I want to show you what the output looks like in this tool. So here we are, we're reminded of our location. So we've selected the Blueprints Community Action Agency region. And then we get into our first indicator. So here we're looking at household types. We can see that there are almost 100,000 households in this area that I've selected. It talks about single persons versus 2, 3, 4-person households. It gives you some of that information basically in text form. You'll see here then this same information is reported in this data table. So hopefully for different types of learners, you can either read or you can look at the table. Or we also have some data visualizations that'll hopefully help you really understand what these data are saying.
Amy,
yes.
I'd like to just jump in and emphasize too to everyone that this is an editable document. Not an edible, you don't want to eat it, but you can eat up the stuff that you see and change it. Such as with this, if Blueprints did this and realized that they didn't want to call the location Blueprints, they could change it to Greene in Washington County so that it was obvious to whoever's doing that. Thanks.
Yes. Yeah, no problem. And I can show you guys too. Yeah, we'll download a Word and document. I can show you how that works as well. So here we can see, like I said, the indicator sort of in our what we call a STEM sentence. And then that same information is then reported here in the data table. You'll see that this says report location, and this is going to be the aggregate. So this is the total Blueprints region. And then you'll see that we have each county that's included in that region also broken out for us. So this is an aggregate of Greene and Washington counties. Then we get household types for just Greene County, just Washington County. And then we get it for the state of Pennsylvania and the rest of the United States. I think that this is also very important just to kind of point out is like, if you're talking to someone again, or you're just yourself trying to understand, what does this really mean? Is it good? Is it bad? Are we on track? Those benchmarks, thinking about what does the state of Pennsylvania look like and what does the United States look like, that can help you say, oh, we're doing better than, or we're doing worse than, or we're right about that national average. You can also do that and look at other counties around you too and use those as benchmarks, but it does kind of start to help you answer that question is like, are we doing well or not doing well? This information then, like I said, is also shown in a data visualization, and these are interactive. So if I hover over them, you can see here 4 people, 5 people, 1 person. So it looks like for the most part, this agency region is made up of 2 people households, some 1-person households, and then we get into some larger family households. One other thing I want to point out is under each of the main data tables, you'll notice that we do have a link back to the original source. So these come to us from the American Community Survey, 2015 to 2019. And you can show more details here, which gives you a lot of information about background, methodology, and any additional calculations that we've done. So just wanted to point that out there. The other thing just to note is that the 2015 to 2019 ACS is the most recent data that are available. They typically release ACS in late November, December time period, and we usually have it in our system by January or February of the next year. So right now, 2015 to 2019 is the most recent that we have. So here, like I said, we can jump between indicators. So we were just looking at household types. But we can jump down to another indicator that we've selected here. So let's look at, for example, free and reduced price lunch. It's going to look a little bit different than some of our other indicators here. So let's head start. And what we're going to see here is this isn't a good example of an area or a data table that reports no data. So sometimes in these reports, you'll either see no data or data suppressed. If it's no data, it's basically that we have no data or we can't aggregate it, right? So this is one of those where we can't aggregate it up to the report area. We'll also show suppressed in these boxes as well, or in these fields. And that usually happens when the number is less than 5. So a good example there when we would suppress data is, for example, like teen pregnancy in a rural area. There may have only been 2 or 3 during that reporting period. And in order to keep those folks' identity and their personal information personal and private, we suppress that data, because if you live in a rural town and there's 3 young girls who have had teen pregnancies, you can likely identify them. So just note that that will be, that may show up in some of your reports as well. But here we get a nice table again of the different school districts in this area. We can see total number of enrolled, total number for free lunch versus reduced lunch versus free and reduced price lunch. So it does give you a nice breakout of students that are eligible for those programs. We use free and reduced price lunch as a really, it's a really good indicator to think about childhood poverty. It's a great indicator to know, like, how well are children doing? Are they getting adequate nutrition? Are they getting it at school? Are they getting it at home? Those types of things. Let's jump down to, we can look at some poverty rates as well. So we have poverty broken out for you guys at a couple of different levels. So there's 50% of the federal poverty line, 125, 185, which I think is really important for a HUD program or housing. And then that poverty rate, this right here, is going to be at 100%, which is just that baseline there. You'll notice here that this is an example of an indicator where we see this dial on the right-hand side. And so sometimes we're able to say, you're doing better or worse, right, than the state or national average. And so we'll do that by including a green number for your aggregate report area. And then you'll notice this little dial on the right-hand side here is also green. This means that your average is, like I said, it's better than the state and national averages. So here we can see that in the blueprints area, the poverty rate at 185 is only at 22%. Versus the Pennsylvania and the United States is 25 and 28. So you'll see that in this dial. These dials are also interactive. So if you wanted to just compare your report location to the United States, you can do that, or just to Pennsylvania. I think that's always a nice, the dials play well in terms of kind of helping people understand where you're at and what are some of the biggest pressing issues in your community. So some of the other poverty indicators have that as well, those dials. And so I was looking for a red one, but it looks like this area is doing pretty well. Here we got lots of green dials. Anytime that we can produce indicators that show trends over time or change over time, we'll do that as well. And so here's a good example. We're looking at child poverty, age 0 to 17, and this is rate of change. So we have from 2010 all the way to 2019, it looks like there. And so you can see that as well in this table. You can't really see the change over time in the map, but we do have a nice trend chart for you. And again, this is an interactive chart. We can start to see, okay, poverty was going up in the United States, through 2015, 2014, and then things started to go down. The same is true of most of Pennsylvania. But this report location has a bit of a more rocky road, right? It is trending downward, but there definitely have been upward ticks. And so this is really important, I think, to talk about some of your local knowledge here. This report captures a point in time, in a sense, right? These are all estimates. Some of the data capture, like for example, around the schools, those are the schools that existed at the time of the data collection. And so one of the things that I always like to bring up is you guys are the experts in your own communities, and never give that up. Never think that the data know more about your community than you do, right? You should use this to validate and to test things out, not to exactly tell you what's going on. And I say that because some of you might be very well aware that there was, some programs that were put in place that helped bring this poverty rate down. It could be a population change issue. You might just have less children, right? So there's less children in poverty over time. And so those are some of the things that you might already know. You don't need data to tell you that. Or, for example, with some of the free and reduced price lunch, we might see a big drop in that. We've seen grant programs, right, that support school lunch that create really big fluctuation in those lunch programs, right? So I think we'll see that, for example, with COVID. I think most schools are getting, everyone's eligible for free and reduced price lunch. So that's going to skew our data for 2020, right? So things like that, And so just want to empower you guys to always think about, well, what do I know about my local community? That can maybe help explain some of the trends or some of the data that you're seeing. So I have looked through several of these with you guys, and hopefully you see that there's kind of that same pattern to every indicator. We see the nice stem sentence that tells us a little bit about the indicator in context of the geography that we've selected. We can see that same information then reported in a data table. We also get a map, which we haven't talked about, but you can view each of these maps in the map room just by clicking this view larger map option. And we'll do that here in a minute. If we have any sort of breakout information, so race, age, gender, ethnicity, we'll include that. And then anytime, like I said, we have trends, we'll make sure to try to include those as well. Some of the data in this hub, so I just want to point out, is very specific to Pennsylvania. And this is really the difference between, people sometimes ask like, well, I've used the national CAAP report. What's the difference? Well, the big difference is the national CAAP report is really high level, all secondary data from national sources, right? Your report, on the other hand, has some really great Pennsylvania state level sources. And so this is an example of one of those where we get these data directly from the Pennsylvania Department of Public Welfare. It's a county level source. I can show more details here and get a link back to where the data came from. And again, the date there. So just know that that's really how it's different. It's much more targeted to Pennsylvania, and the data are also much more localized to Pennsylvania as well. So I'm going to scroll back up to the top here and show you a couple of other outputs. So one thing I want to do, I'm going to go back here and I'm going to change my location, and I'm actually going to select a series of counties, and don't fault me for selecting counties that are probably not near each other, but that's okay here. So, and just to kind of show you what that looks like, it does populate just slightly differently. So instead of having that agency name at the top, we have just those 3 counties that I've selected instead. You can see the report location again is the aggregate of those 3 counties. But then I do get to see, right, the information for each of those counties. And I think that that's also something to note, or, just to point out, is that, for example, this linguistically isolated indicator here, it looks like that report location it's doing pretty good, right, compared to the state national averages. But when we actually look at each of the counties themselves, we can see here that it looks like Beaver County and Fulton County are doing just fine. but it's Chester County where we have a large population of folks that are linguistically isolated, right? 2%. And so while that may seem it's probably a small number of individuals, those are still folks that we can serve, right? And so I think that's something, a way in which you guys can use this report to target interventions, or if you're writing grants or thinking about new programming, where would we want to put programming in, or what kind of supports would we want to put in? Obviously, we would want to pay a little bit more attention to Chester County, maybe send more resources there, or make sure that we have materials that are available in multiple languages, things like that. So just kind of wanted to point that out as well.
Jamie, I have a quick question.
Yeah, go ahead.
There's a question in the chat, and I know she has to leave. She asked, does this tool allow us to look at supplemental poverty rates? I'm thinking about that a lot as a child tax credit dollars start hitting our communities, and how that could affect other outcomes or indicators, and how we can see any of that in the future data as it's released.
Yeah, and we can look at that in some of the map room data. So we've got a lot of other poverty rate information and like CAAP data and that kind of stuff. And so those are available in the map room. You guys also, you know, if that's an indicator that you feel like would be really important or really helpful moving forward, and you want us to include it in the report, let Dan know, and he can pass that on to us. And you know, we're happy to swap out indicators or add or make changes if it is something, like I said, that would be really helpful to you guys for sure. So yeah, that's a great question. Okay, so going back to our reports here, I want to show you a couple of other things. So we do have some report options that I just want to point out. You can hide the county data. So for example, if you just wanted to show your report location and match that up to the state and national averages, that's basically what that option will do there, is it'll take away all the individual county data. We can show state data, or we can hide those benchmarks basically. The supplemental data are the race and ethnicity breakout. So anything that has the race, age, gender, or ethnicity, and then show maps. So you can turn the maps off as well. The only reason I mention that is because if you are going to be printing this report, most people don't want to print a long report in color. And, you know, the maps aren't very interesting unless they have some color variation to them most of the time. So you can actually uncheck this box and it'll take all the maps out. So it won't be as pretty, but it'll be shorter and it'll use less toner. So we also have a couple of other options. So we have a quick fax report. And this is really just the series of data tables, and it tells you, it gives you those red, green numbers as well. So if you are maybe creating a targeted report, looking at a series of indicators, and you want to just do a quick prioritization process, this is a very helpful tool to go through, and you can see here, okay, like high school dropouts is red, the graduation rate is red. So those are things that we would want to be looking at. It looks like adult literacy though is pretty high, so we're doing good there. Income per capita. So again, it's just kind of it's just a quick way to look at some of the red dials, basically. Where are you doing well, where are you not? And then finally, we do have this source and methodology option. What this is going to do is it's going to create an entire source and methodology document for you. So if you need to attach it as an appendix, if you want to cite any of these sources individually, all of that is kind of pre-populated for you in this appendix, and you can kind of pick and choose how you want to use that. We also have a share button. I typically joke that these reports are probably not very exciting to share on social media, but nonetheless, we've made it easy for you to do. But you can share them via this link, you know, so if you want to share it with somebody else in your organization, or you want to share it to your board or something like that, we've made it easy to just copy and paste that link there. And there's a print option as well. So finally, this is really where a lot of the exciting stuff lives, I suppose. You can get this as a PDF, and the PDF is going to come to you just like the report looks, right? You're going to get a data table, you're going to get the dial, you're going to get all the data visualizations, and you can't change it, right? It's a PDF, it's just the way it is. But we do have this Microsoft Word option as well. And the Word option is really great, I think, for the community action agencies, because as I mentioned before, the secondary data piece, right, is just one part of your CNA. So you download it as a Word document, and what's going to happen is, I'm going to let mine populate here real quick. You're able to erase the things that you want to get rid of. You're able to add in additional context if there are stories, photos, local data, anything along those lines. You can drop those in. You can also add additional text. So if you want to talk about why an indicator is important to your community, you can do that as well. And then some people like to, you throw out the maps or throw out some of these charts and just keep the dials. It kind of depends on what you're trying to do with the data, but a lot of folks are able to use this as their starting point for their CNA, but also use some of those data for PowerPoints, one-pagers, infographics, social media posts, those kinds of things. So you can get those individual elements in that Word document and be able to pull them out that way. So that here, now I've got it actually loading, and you'll see that it'll say converting to a Microsoft Word document. And this does take a second. The PDF typically loads a little bit faster, so you can do some arm circles while you wait. So that's always we want to put a little guy like working out, while it loads. So
someone in the chat did ask, is it possible to overlap maps to determine areas of concern, like households receiving SNAP and authorized food store access SNAP?
Yes, absolutely. We're going to jump right into that here in just a second. So this is really the tool that gets you a lot of that foundational data that you're going to need for your community needs assessment. Like I mentioned, I hope though that you guys think about this tool when you're writing grants, when you're doing program evaluation, when you're thinking about starting new programs, that type of thing, because I think this, it can give you a lot of data that you need to make your case. And two, it can tell you a lot about, basically where you should put your programs or, where you should, what you should be focusing on. So just a couple of notes there. So that's really the community needs assessment tool. One other thing to note there that I didn't mention before is that we are always, I say always, we're constantly updating data when data are available. So the caveat there is, right, some data are only released once a year, once every 3 years, once every 5 years, but there are some data like that unemployment figure, right, that's released monthly. So for example, if you were to come in and you'd made a report on Monday and we updated data for unemployment on Wednesday, and you came back and you pulled that same report from the link, on a Friday, you're going to get automatically updated data on Friday, right? So it's going to have those updated unemployment data for you. Now, this is exciting, right? Because you don't have to do anything to make sure that you have the most up-to-date data, but it also presents a challenge sometimes when you want to say, okay, we're going to stop data collection at X point and start to do our analysis moving forward. So just know that if you want to say, okay, this is our point in time when we're going to stop and do all of our analysis, I would recommend definitely downloading it as a PDF or downloading it as that Word document so you have that data that you can work with consistently. Otherwise, you might see some updates as if you come back and continue to remake that report. So, all right, so that's the community needs assessment. If you have any questions about that, happy to go over those at the end, or you can drop them in the chat. I'm going to jump into the map room though, and hopefully get into some of the other questions and functions that you guys are looking for. So our map room, unlike the CNA, so the CNA has about, I think your guys have about 85 or 100 indicators in there. The map room, on the other hand, has about 25,000. So it's a little crazy, overwhelming, but I'm going to show you how to search for data and how to use our browse options so you can kind of get what you need and what you're looking for. So when you drop into the map room, you're going to eventually, you're always going to fall on the search data window here. And so I'm going to point out these two buttons here at the bottom. There's browse by topic and browse by source. The browse by topic is our taxonomy, right, of how we sort of categorize those 25,000 available data layers. So if I start to open some of these carrots, you can see I can click crime, I can look at incarceration rates, and then it gives me individual data sets here. Each of these are available to me to add to a map, right? And just like in the report, they have those little I buttons. So I can click on that. I can get a description, the release date. This is available at a county level and a tract level. And then it gives me that link back to the original source as well. So anytime you're looking for source information, look for that little I button. And I can add any of these to my map then, just simply by clicking the checkbox next to the indicator that I'm interested in adding. And then there's that add to map button at the bottom. So now we're seeing incarceration rates by county for the entire nation. And I want to zoom into Pennsylvania. So I'm going to use this search location bar up here on the top right. And we try to be a little fancy like Google and say, okay, we think we know what you're searching for here. So I type in Penn and it's going to show up Pennsylvania Drive. So I'm going to go ahead and zoom into the state. And I apologize because New York and Pennsylvania are, you guys, the shape of it, whenever we zoom in, you always have to zoom right back out so you can see the whole thing. So, but here now we're looking at incarceration rates across the state. So we're able to look at some of those counties that we've been looking at before. You'll notice over here on the right-hand side, we can see, okay, this is incarceration rate. It tells us where it comes from and the date. We can have our legend. So we're looking for those red areas, which it doesn't look like you guys have any that are over 50%. Looks like there's one area that's over 5%, 2 to 5%. And then some of the lower incarceration rates around the state. We can also, though, look at this data by tract level, like I said. So if we have the data available at multiple geographies, you'll see this little data geography option in the legend. And we can quickly switch then between county level and tract level data. So for anybody who's ever used GIS or made a map by hand or from scratch, there we go. You'll know that like this is the hard work of it. And so hopefully you'll see that we've made it hopefully very easy for you guys to switch between geographies, right? So being able to see this at both a county level and then also say, okay, now I see what my county says, but what does this mean for the smaller areas, the communities that we live in, right? And that tract level, zip code level data is going to get you down to understand those smaller communities and those smaller geographies a little bit better. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add a layer here real quick, just so you can see also what that looks like. I clicked close. I don't know why I did that. I'm going to add some poverty data. And this is another good example of, you can see here the data geography option. Right now it's on county, but we have it at a lot of different geographies. And so again, you can switch between them quickly and easily. You can also select for a lot of the ACS data. You can see here that we have things like school districts, Senate and House districts at the state level, and then congressional districts. And I just wanted to point this out for anybody who's doing any advocacy work of any kind. It's a lot more impactful when you take a map of poverty to your legislator that's their legislative district and not just counties, right? Or if you go to a school board and you take the poverty of, children in poverty of that school district rather than just the county. So those are some nice options there. You'll notice that we also have a data types for this population below poverty level as well. So we can change the geography. We'll select a zip code, but we could also look at it percent versus total. So what we're looking at right now is the number of people that live in poverty divided by the total population, right? That's giving us the percentage. But we can actually look at it as totals too. So here we can see there's some pockets where the population below poverty is over 1,500, right? That higher end of the scale. Some of them are under, and then some here, just like I mentioned, no data or data suppressed. Now, at this point, I would encourage all of you to click the map. That's one thing I haven't done yet. So I've been playing around in the legend, but you can actually get a lot of information by clicking the map. So here I've selected a zip code, so 18504, and I can see actual numbers. I can see the population in poverty, so that percent, 18%. And I bring this up because let me go back to my percents here. My Zoom is in the way. Hold on, there we go. And click on one of these areas. So I bring this up because there may be areas that where our legend says, this darker teal color is over 20%. I always like to ask the question, well, how far over 20%, right? It may be right at 20%. For example, this zip code that I selected is about 21.6%, so just slightly over. But there might be some census tracts that we click on that are well over 20%. They could be 30 or 40%. Here, the ones we're getting up to 26%. And that's significant, right? We can only show so much gradation in our legend. And so again, it's really helpful to see those actual numbers for the zip codes or the counties that you're working in. We also include margin of error in this. And so if you are interested or worried about margin of error, you can get that information here as well. So I'm going to go back to my add data or my search data window. And we looked at browse by topic. We also have browse by source. So if you're interested in some data from a specific source, USDA, CDC, whatever it may be, you can look through this list and see if we actually acquire data from that source or not. These carrots work just like the carrots in the search by topic, and it gets you down to individual data sets where you can click the checkbox and click add to map, and you'll see that it adds it to the map. So, it's not, there we go. And so one of the things I just wanted to note there is that if you're ever interested in sort of knowing what our sources are, where we're getting our data from, this is a really great list to look through because it gives you all those sources. And I think we're about up to 90 something in here. So a lot of different national data sources. And so there might be some things in here that you didn't even know existed or that get you some new data that you didn't have access to before. I'm going to go ahead and close this though and go back to that search data window, which is where you'll land. And we're going to search by keyword, which is what most everybody does, but I feel obligated to show people the topic and source because it does come in helpful sometimes. So like I did earlier, I searched for the term poverty. And what you'll see here is that we have about 400 different layers related to poverty. And again, that feels a little bit overwhelming, but what that really means is that you can see here just by the list, we have past years. So if you wanted to look at poverty from 2011 to 2015, and you wanted to compare it to the most recent data set, you could do that. We have it broken out by different age ranges. And then you'll notice that we have also those thresholds. There's 50%, 100%, 125%. So those are all available in here as well. This is where you'll find some of those SAPI numbers too. So this is instead of using the ACS poverty data, these are the small area income poverty estimates that are available in here as well. Oh, I closed my window. Let me search poverty again. And just like I did with those other layers, I can click the checkbox next to the layer that I'm interested in, and it's gonna go ahead and add that to my map. So I've already got it on here. You'll notice here that I'm turning my layers on and off by clicking the checkbox next to map. So I can turn that social vulnerability index off. I can also click the label button, and here now I'm seeing the actual percentages for each of these zip codes on the map. These will mostly resize as you zoom in and zoom out. So that's just another nice little option too, if you want to see those labels. And I bring that up because much like somebody else asked, you're not just limited to one data layer, right? So for example, if we wanted to add food deserts on top of our poverty data, we can do that. And this is great. We have change. That's the one I want. Food desert census tract change. And you'll notice that I added it to the map, but it didn't show up. And so this is something that's important to note. It shows up at the bottom of my legend. And so you can think of this legend as the actual layers on your map. So here we have population and poverty on top, then social vulnerability, then incarceration rate, and then those food desert census tract change layers on the bottom. That's why we can't see them. So if I pull and drag and drop that food desert layer up to the top, now you'll see that it shows up on top of my poverty layer. So I'm gonna zoom out. We've been in Scranton for a while, so I'm gonna go to another area here. Let's see, where are we at? There we go. Let's go over here, and we can see now that we're in an area that does have some of those food desert census tracts, right? So we're able to see the poverty below and the food desert census tracts on top. There's a couple of little tricks and tips here that help you see two layers at once when you're looking at two polygon layers together. That label is one of them. The other one is you can change the transparency of things. So if I wanted to, for example, label the population below poverty and turn the transparency all the way up, I will basically make that layer go away, and I can see the full food desert census tract layer now, and I'm able to view those both at the same time. So just some tricks there on using the transparency and the labels kind of help you overlap some of those things. You can add point level data on top of anything. So here, I know, for example, we have assisted housing properties, public housing properties from around the state. And so I can add those on top, and you'll see these nice little blue dots that show up. I can click on any of these, and it's going to give me that additional information. I get the name of the housing development, how many units are there, what the occupancy is, those types of things. And so I hope that you see that there's a lot of possibilities here in terms of really looking at relationships between these groups of people. So it's one of those things where you're not going to make a direct correlation that food deserts are causing poverty in your community, right? But you can start to see the relationship between food deserts and poverty levels in your community. You could add things like grocery stores, right, to this list, or farmers markets. I know we've got farmers markets too. And you can start to see, okay, if I were to live in one of these food desert areas, how far would I need to travel in order to get to a farmer's market or somewhere that sells fresh fruits and vegetables? So I really think it helps kind of tell that story. Again, it helps make your case, and for you just to learn a little bit more about the conditions in your community. If at any time you want to just start over and you're like, I've made a big mess of my map, you can do that with this clear map button at the top, and it's just going to start you over from scratch. A couple of other things to point out in the map room is over here, there's like this little square within squares, and this allows you to switch base maps. So if you are interested in, being able to see satellite imagery, you can see satellite imagery. If you want to see streets, you can use this open street map. These are helpful sometimes. Let me add some data back on here real quick. And just to kind of orient people, right? So oftentimes we encourage folks to use maps to start conversations or, include in a presentation. But, people don't always know what they're looking at. So if you put in a highway or some streets or some of that satellite imagery, people are saying, oh, I know where I'm at now. I see a building that I know, or I see a street that I know. So those base maps are available over here. We also have some reference layers. So up here on the right-hand corner, there's these two little squares. If I click the second square, I can get things like highways, again, county boundaries, state boundaries. I can label the counties. So those are some things that people typically look for that I just want to point out as well. All right, how are we doing on time? Let me look here. Okay, we're doing pretty good. I'll show you a couple more things, and then I'd love to open it up for questions, or if you'd like to have me demonstrate something else, I'd be happy to do that. I'm going to clear my map here. I'm going to go back to my original base map, and let me add some data. So let's look. Well, let me go back to go to free and reduced price lunch here. Let me get to the most recent data. I'm going to add that to the map. So we're looking at free and reduced price lunch, and this is actually showing us rates by actual schools themselves, not just the school district. So we can see, for example, some of these orange are well over 90%, 95% of students in this school are eligible for free and reduced price lunch. We can also see, some of the others that are a little bit lower. And I wanted to use this as an example because we have some advanced mapping tools. You can click this tools button up here on the top left, or in the legend, there's this little tools bar at the bottom that you can click as well. In here, we have some tools that I think will be helpful to you guys. So one of the questions that we often get asked is, well, can I download this data? And the answer is yes, you can download the data. So this select data tool is going to allow you to do that. You can select by rectangle, polygon, a radius. So if you wanted to see how many schools were within a 25-mile radius, you could do that. But I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to draw an irregular little area here. And it's going to highlight all of the records or all of the points that fall within that area. And so now I can actually show an attribute table. So you'll notice there's this little button down here that shows up after you've made a selection. And this gives you then an Excel file. You can download these data. You can use them in other, mapping software, Tableau, other analysis software. You can give them to people that may need them in your community. But I think this is a nice starting point. If you were looking to, implement a program across the school systems, well, which schools would you want to target? Which have the highest rates of poverty, or maybe the lowest rates of poverty? Which one has, children that have a high rate of disability or a low rate of disability? Those are some of the types of things you can use that tool for. We also have a query data tool as well. So for example, if we wanted to see only those schools that had more than, we'll say, 200 students, we can run that query, and it looks like all of the schools have more than 200 students. So let's try 500. Okay, now we get a smaller selection. You'll see just those with over 500 enrolled are now highlighted in red. And again, I can get a nice attribute table to say, we just want to work with these big schools, or these are the ones that I want to reach out to. I can download this as an Excel file, like I said, and use it elsewhere. We also have some other great tools in here, like measurement tools. The mask tool, I think, is really helpful. Let me add my poverty layer back on here. And what it does is it allows you to kind of highlight specific areas that you're working in. So this mask tool right here, it says hide the surrounding of an interest area on a map. So for example, I can say, I just want to select some zip codes. And so I'm going to select a series of zip codes on the map. And you'll see now that it's highlighting those that I'm selecting. And I think this is nice because it kind of allows you to pop out an area of interest, right? So I just want to be looking at this area because for some reason I'm interested in it, right? So I can just look at these zip codes, and then I've kind of hidden everything around it with the transparency. I can turn everything off, or I can turn it up to maybe 30%. And so I can still see the areas around it, but I've got this nice highlighted area right in the center of the map. So hopefully that's a helpful tool. You can select an entire state or an entire county that way as well. So finally, let me clear all this out. And finally, we have, oh, I guess we don't have that in here. You should have an annotation tool. I'm going to get you that. I don't know why it's not in here. But you'll be able to like draw circles and point arrows and add text. I can't figure out why that's not in there. Maybe, yep, I'll have to look for it. So watch for that annotation tool because it should be in there as well. So anytime you want to go back and add data, you simply click this add data button. The tools are going to get you to some of those advanced mapping tools, and then the clear map will obviously get you to start over. You can save these. So these will save to your profile here on the CAAP hub. You can share them. So I think these are actually good things to share on social media. Not that the reports aren't, they're just probably a little dense. But these types of maps can be shared easily through the link or through the social media buttons that we have here. You can also export these maps. And so here you'll see map only, map plus legend. So some of those options, you can get that as a PNG file, so like an image file, or as a PDF document. PDF document, just like with the report, is static. You can't make changes to it. But the PNG files are nice because they're just image files. You can drop them into Word documents, into PowerPoints, into infographics. Like I said, they're really a lot more portable that way. So you can kind of move those around. The other thing I wanted to note with the share button is that if you want to share a map with someone in the organization, you can simply copy and paste this link here, and they can open the map that you've created. So if you create this map and you want to share it with someone, send them this link. They can then add data, move things around, and it's not going to mess up your original map. Your original map stays just the way it is, and they basically start a new mapping session with your layers, but they can add their own data, they can move around, and it's not gonna mess with the integrity of your original map. So just know that hopefully you guys can use that for collaboration or kind of share information that way. So that's the big part of the map room. There is a help button right here. So if you forget everything I said, you can go back through, and this will walk you through kind of those major steps of making a map, downloading and sharing. And really the map room is something, like I said, I think it's a great kind of sandbox to look around, to look at conditions, to check things out, to start to ideate, with some of your peers. The report is a little bit more targeted. It's, more for that needs assessment process or for a grant writing process. And so I encourage you guys to look through all of the different data layers that are in here, because it's not just CNA data that's in this map room. We've got lots of agriculture data, income data, poverty data. There's environmental data. So if you are working on anything related to climate change or anything like that, we've got lots of weather, precipitation, drought, soil information. There's obviously a lot of health indicators in here as well. So if you're ever interested in like the county health rankings data, we've got all of that in here. We've added quite a bit of data related to opioids, death of despair, drug poisoning, those types of things. We also do have a section on COVID in here somewhere, I believe. And so we have added those to our map room. They should be in here, I think. Maybe I have to search for them.
Someone asked if all agency staff can use the tool, or is it just select individuals?
Yeah, no, as so long as you're part of, like you're a staff member of a community action agency. Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. And if you have selected partners too that you'd like to share this with, check with Dan, because this is a, it's a membership. I think it's, something that you guys get as part of your membership. But we don't, I mean, if it would be helpful to a group or something that's, writing a grant, let's, let them have it if that makes sense. So here you can see, yeah, we've got updated COVID data as well. So if you want to look at, cases and look at that alongside poverty or health professional shortage areas or prevalence of diabetes, it's all in here to be able to do that as well. We are always, adding new data and updating data. So one of the last things I'll show you here before we jump into some questions, under the community needs assessment, there's a what's new section. And so if you are interested in knowing, like, what have we added recently? What have we updated recently? This what's new section is a great place to find that information. So here you can see we've added something as recently as yesterday, it looks like. So we updated the walkability index. We've got drought intensity on the monitor. There is a little bit of population change data, it looks like, that we've published. So this is a good list of either you can see new data or data updates. Sometimes we have to make corrections. So the original source will correct something. So we'll note those corrections here as well. But I always like looking through this list too, because there's some things in here that, may spark some new ideas. Broadband is another big issue that a lot of folks are dealing with right now. We've got a lot of information related to broadband from the FCC, from ACS, this digital divide index. Those types of things. So as you're talking to people about ARPA funds and how to spend them, broadband is, I think, one way that people are looking to do some of that. Park access, we've got the updated food desert census tracts. There's all kinds of stuff in here. So we'll just encourage you to look at the what's new, kind of browse through all of the data that we have in the map room. And if you have any questions about any of that, clearly don't hesitate to reach out. We're always happy to answer questions. And I think my email or our general email, is here. So you can reach out to me anytime, kleinsorgej@missouri.edu. So I'm going to pause and see what questions we have in the chat. And if anybody else wants to speak up or raise their hand to ask a question, happy to answer it or demonstrate something again. So we had a question in the needs assessment report generator, can you change the date selection? Not at this time. So really the goal for us in those community needs assessments is to always have the most up-to-date information. The best way to go back and get older data is to do that in the map room. You can find those layers there in the map room. So it is available. It's just not as easy to get it with just kind of a one-click option. And so we, overlay SNAP households and authorized food store access. I can demonstrate that real quick just so you can see what that looks like in the map room here. So someone had asked about SNAP. My map's thinking. So I can just search SNAP and you'll see I get a lot of layers here. We've had looks like a update in 2020. One thing to note about that search or that keyword search is that while we try to be fancy like Google, we're not as fancy as Google. And so you can't like ask a question like how many people live in poverty in X county in Pennsylvania. It's not going to give you what you want. So just kind of note that it's really more about a keyword search, like you're looking for the data layers rather than looking for an answer. So maybe someday we'll get there. That'd be nice. And what was the other one here? So we had households receiving SNAP. That was the other one. Here we go. So you can see I just typed in household SNAP, right? And so now we get that nice households receiving SNAP layer, and I'll go to Pennsylvania and zoom in here. Should show me my retailers then. Probably because I'm on Zoom and I'm on campus, it's taking a minute to load. So any other questions though, in the meantime, happy to talk through anything else or answer any other questions you guys might have.
Yeah, hi Jamie. So I see you're searching for SNAP, and I know we saw reduced lunches and subsidized housing. So this is just kind of a confirmation question. It seems like there's an array of public benefits data accessible by using this information, more so than I'm guessing just those three, correct?
Yeah, so I mean, like there's things like Medicaid, Medicare. We also have, oh yeah, like a lot more location data. So like physicians, if I could spell it right, we'll just do hospitals instead. You know, points of service. The other one that people have been accessing a lot lately is we've got like different types of exempt organizations or nonprofit organizations. So if you kind of want to see, right, how many mental health organizations you have in a specific area, you know, those are things that you can look at as well. But yeah, lots of kind of public benefits data. There's also like transfer payments, so supplemental income, payments from different types of assistance programs, veterans benefits. So yeah, there's kind of a lot of that.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
In the chat, somebody just wanted confirmation how to log in for this. Is there a specific login, or can anybody just create an account?
Yeah, so the register will show up here, and typically you can either send me an email directly and I'll make sure that you have an @CAAP, some sort of, you know, legitimate email address, or you can send it to Dan and he can send it to me as well that way. So either way, we can get you registered. Basically what I do is if you send me a Gmail address, I'll say no, or I'll check in on it to make sure that you're listed as a staff member. So yeah.
And then somebody wants to know what the swipe tool would be used for.
Oh, that's a great question. Let me add a couple layers here to my map. It's good to look back. So much like I had talked about before, if you wanted to look at some like older data and some newer data, maybe I'll choose this one. And let me go to Pennsylvania here. Yeah, I'm going to get your map room to just show Pennsylvania. I don't know why it doesn't. It's making me mad. So the swipe tool here, what you'll see is now we can look at two layers kind of at the same time without overlapping them, is basically what this is doing. So I can say, okay, now I see, so the teal color is more recent, the yellow color is older. So it looks like, you know, in and around that Scranton area, maybe it looks like poverty has gone down a little bit, but then it looks like maybe In this area here, it's gone up a little bit. So that's what the swipe tool is really useful for. You can go up and down, or you can use the little scope, which you can only use when you're in the map room, but it's kind of fun to play with. So the vertical swipe, though, I think is probably going to be the most useful for you guys there. And I'll get you an annotation. There's an annotation tool, and it should be right here. And I'm frustrated it's not there for you. But that, like I said, that's a fun one too, because you can like circle areas, you can draw arrows, you can type in extra text. So it's just kind of a nice way to annotate your map that way. We do have the walk scores. That was something that was updated recently. So tell you how walkable an area is. The measurement tool is just that, like if you want to look at the distance between two areas, or you're looking to measure a property and acreage, you can do that there. So those are some of those tools as well. Anything else? So I know that Leslie, you are recording. We have a video from, it looks like last year, we talked through a similar demonstration of the CNA in the map room. So you're welcome to watch that one. We'll upload the one from today as well. So if you want to come back and watch it, you can, or share it with others. You're welcome to do that. Any other questions though?
I see one more that says, with a swipe tool, can you build 2 unique maps to swipe between?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know the answer to that. I think the answer is no, but I want to say, yeah, well, I'll find out. I'll let you know. I don't think so. I think you can only, well, you can add more than 2 layers. So you could have one map that had 2 or 3 layers, and you could have one map that had another 2 or 3 layers. It's just whether it would be as useful to swipe between them. I don't know if that answers the question or not. You can use it more than 2 layers though, yes. Okay, yeah, great. Awesome.
Any other questions for you guys?
I
think-
like that question Jen struck because it's very much like using the matrices in Roma that we compare between and see if things correlate. So very good question.
Yeah, and I'll have to play around with that and see, yeah, what that looks like.
Jen, I'm going to get you Jamie's email address in the post-webinar email,
Yeah.
and that would be who you would reach out to if you have questions
Yes.
regarding the tool.
Yep.
All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and put a link in the chat for a survey. If you complete the survey for today, you get a certificate of completion within 48 hours. So we would love to get your feedback on this. Let us know and fill out that survey. Jamie, we so appreciate all your work and data and numbers. They're all so fun, and we really appreciate it. It went really well. Thank you so much. And I'll make sure in the post-webinar email, we have all your information. We have a link to the tool and all that good stuff. But thank you very much for your time. And I appreciate everybody coming today. We had a great time.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Have a good day.